right-wing party formed, which did much better than the other one.
Mm-hmm.
And that the new party is actually a split-off from Atasut. The former mayor of Inuk, Bjarni Kreutzmann, got fed up with some of the people in Atasut, so he formed his own party, and they did quite well.
Mm-hmm. Who was the new socialist party running this time around?
Oh, there's no new socialist party, just a new right-wing party.
I see. Okay. And how does the party politics system run in Greenland as compared to here in Canada?
Well, it's very interesting. It's very interesting thing to study. First of all, I guess I should point out that the Greenlandic political parties are not just the children of the Danish political parties. The big Danish political parties tried to grow their own Greenlandic parties that looked just like them, but they didn't. It didn't click. It didn't work, and it took a couple of years of people thinking about it, and then these other parties started to emerge.
Homegrown?
They're homegrown, absolutely. You know, and it's fascinating to watch. And that would mean, you know, the equivalent here would be no conservative, liberal, or NDP, but instead, you know, Northwest Territories political parties that are unique to the Northwest Territories. So you can see it's interesting to imagine what kind of parties these could be. Maybe in Canada, when we get party politics, it will just be conservative, liberal, NDP. I don't know, but in Greenland, it's their own parties, and people take party politics quite seriously. It really has changed Greenland because there's so much debate about politics before the government does anything important. There is a serious public debate with, you know, Siumut maybe will have a policy to do something. They'll be criticized from the left, they'll be criticized from the right. The newspapers are full of coherent debate about any subject, you know, as opposed to here where, you know, on two levels, if someone is elected an MLA without party politics, they're there for 4 years. They can do anything they want, really. I mean, they might not get reelected, but during the 4 years, they're not accountable to anybody. In Greenland, the politicians are accountable to their own parties, who meet regularly to basically to judge their politicians.
So that when people are voting for the candidates, they have a pretty good idea what each candidate stands for.
Well, it's very interesting how their system works. When you go to vote, you have two choices. You can vote for the party, or you can vote for any one of the candidates for the party. So in Inuk, for example, if I wanted to vote for Siumut, I had my choice of voting for 12 Siumut candidates. So in Canada, say for a federal election, say for the Liberal Party, only the Liberals choose the Liberal candidate.
Right.
Under the Greenlandic system, anyone who's a member of the Liberal Party could run for office, and if the Liberals get the most votes, then the Liberal candidate who got the most votes would be elected. But it helps to stop a small group of people controlling things. People have that much more say. I don't think it exists anywhere else. It's very interesting. Yeah, it is. It is. But the other thing is that major public issues really are debated. For example, in the Northwest Territories, we have this proposal for a $1.2 billion road system. Well, you know, who thought that up? That came from a minister and his upper staff. And it's now policy, and it goes to Ottawa as this is what the Northwest Territories wants. There's been no public debate about it. There's been no public discussion of, do people in the Northwest Territories want to tell Ottawa that one of our priorities is a $1 billion road system? Not that we're ever going to get it, but in Greenland, decisions like that aren't made without structured debate. And it seems like a very healthy process.
Mm-hmm. And does that type of political system help to discipline the behavior of politicians?
Sure, because you're not just one individual out to say anything that makes a name back home. You're accountable to people on a day-to-day basis through the party, and there have been examples of parties, kicking people out simply because they weren't team players or they just didn't make much sense. It's just a bit of checks and balances.
Mm-hmm. As you said, the political parties have very different qualities to them. And if we take Ateshut or the new right-wing party that you mentioned, what sort of platform would it have? What kind of mixture of free market and traditional social policies would it have in its platform?
I think we have to start by recognizing that Greenland has one of the highest degrees of government participation in the marketplace of anywhere in the world. 60% of all business in Greenland is done by government companies. So that's where we start. So the parties on the left are saying this is a good thing, especially in a time of economic crisis. The government can use these companies to guarantee people have an okay standard of living. The parties on the right are arguing for more for the government, the big government companies like the trading company that operates all the government stores or the fishing company, that they be operated in a clearly business-like manner. And one example of this is the fishing company runs many fish packing plants in the big communities and the small communities. Many of the ones in the smaller communities don't make money. So the company said to the government, okay, we'll run all these plants, but we want you to pay us extra. They're supposed to pay their own way with the big factories. But for the little factories, if you want us to do this, you have to pay us to do it, because we want to be a serious business. And if your government's policy is to generate jobs in the small communities, that's fine with us. But we want it understood that it's your policy, that it's a government program, and you should pay for it then. And so this is the sort of thing that the right-wing parties have pushed for, as well as privatizing companies as well. Mm-hmm. But you have to realize that in Greenland, government companies are extremely important. For example, I think one of the best things about Greenland is the fact that basic food costs the same anywhere in Greenland. It's a government policy that anybody in Greenland can walk into a government store and buy everything you need for normal food at the same price. Compare that here, where if you fly from Iqaluit to Pond Inlet, the price of food goes way up. People's salaries only go up a little bit. If you're on old age pensions, you don't get anything to compensate you for the cost of living difference. In Greenland, it's a government policy. All Greenlanders pay the same price for food. Now, that means that's government interference in the marketplace. The parties on the left think it's a wonderful idea in limited amounts. Mm-hmm. Parties on the right in this election were saying the government should stop doing anything that doesn't make money. They were using that as a principle. So then the parties on the left said, well, that's very nice, but what that means is shutting down villages. And that's what the Danish government did in the 60s, and Greenlanders hated it. And that's actually what led to home rule government, was the reaction to the Danish government policy. So you're now seeing Greenlandic politicians, arguing the kind of politics that the Danes used to argue. It's fast. It's a very sophisticated political system.
Mm-hmm. But with the political party system, we have an environment where the participants are adversaries and therefore antagonistic. Isn't that kind of contradictory to the kind of harmonious relationship that
of
Inuit,
Inuit culture?
Yeah.
I think rather than it being pure antagonism, you can look at it more as constructive criticism. It's, you know, people can sit down and have a good political argument, and they do. They have tremendous political arguments in public about what should happen. But people are still more or less friends the next day. They understand that, you know, we're just deciding which way to go forward, and debate is necessary.
All of the elected politicians know each other quite well personally.
Yeah, and the current crop of politicians have all been around for a long time. One criticism I would see in the Greenlandic system, it's not the system's fault, I think it's more the party's fault, is there aren't all that many young people coming in, except through the Inuit Atakatagit party. They're bringing in a lot of young people. Siumut, it's the same faces that have been there for all 12 years. But, okay, you know, there's the possibility of antagonism or bad feelings, but look at here. I mean, really, how much say do people have in the big decisions in the Eastern Arctic?
Mm-hmm.
Really? How much, and that's only the politicians, how much say does the average man and woman living in Iqaluit have in the overall priorities of government? Even if they want to get involved. Even if they want to get involved, you know, unless...
Well, just put it on first and then...
Okay. Unless you're unless you get involved in politics and get elected to something important, really, there's no room for people to have any say. So, given the choice between the possibility of having public arguments and not having any public discussion at all, I'll vote for public arguments.
A lot of talk, getting hot.
It's bad in here.
Yeah.
I saw a major drip coming off your hair there a minute ago. Break?
Yeah, I think so. I want to... Oh, okay. What can we learn from the lesson in Greenland with party politics? Does it mean that when we deal with governments, and it means people placing their trust in governments, that it's a nature of the beast to have something like political party system?
I guess you could put it that way. In any society, one of the primary roles of government is to make major decisions about economics and, you know, housing, important decisions that affect everybody's life. And two questions that come up are who makes the decisions and how wide is the discussion in the society before these decisions are made. And, you know, there's no question that party politics is not a perfect thing. There's a lot of problems in any party system. But what I heard over and over again from Greenlanders is that party politics has sharply increased the level of discussion and debate in the society. That instead of decisions being made by unelected bureaucrats, upper-level bureaucrats, and politicians being elected as individuals for 4 years, and then nobody having any control over them until it's election time. So the guy could talk about something, go off to Yellowknife or Ottawa or whatever, and change his mind totally, and there's nothing people could do about it. It's not so easy to do that in a party system. And
you have to make your position
you have to make your position known, and you're working with other people, so you can't just all of a sudden change your mind and go flying off.
Or you can't just talk vaguely and get away with it.
Yeah. But in practice in Greenland, there's been this one major party, and they've always had to do cooperation with one of the other parties to stay in power. And what that means is that you've got continuity, there's a certain stability. It's been the same premier right from day one, same government leader, although the ministers have changed. But anything the government does, any major decisions, are laid out in public. People with very different opinions have, full right to criticize the plans right in front of the public, through the media. And I think people think better decisions are made that way, that it's simply a more democratic process. It gets more people actively involved. And certainly, the level of participation in the elections was quite high.
Mm. What were the election issues this time?
The election was called because of a financial scandal in the government. They have money to host visiting government delegations. And somehow one of the other parties found out that there was a problem with the accounting and that a lot of the money just it was spent, but it couldn't be explained. And this embarrassed the government and they had to call an election. As it turned out, it didn't turn out to be a big issue. The big issue was the economy on a number of levels. The Greenlandic economy is still heavily dependent on transfers from Denmark of maybe $600 million a year. So it's just like the Northwest Territories. You get a block grant from Ottawa to Yellowknife. That's the core of the government budget. The three other things that they have are mining, and the one big mine in the country closed down because it reached the end of its life. So they lost money, no more money from this, no more taxes. The second thing is cod fishing, cod processing, and the cod have sort of moved towards Iceland. Not forever, people don't think they're gone forever, but it's just one of these up and down things in fisheries. And for the next couple of years, the money from that's going to be lower. And shrimp, they're still catching lots of really good shrimp, but the price for shrimp in the world market has gone down. So there's no question the next couple of years there's going to be a crunch, a financial crunch. And the question was how to deal with it. And then the other thing is, and this might sound crazy, but it's true, that even after 12 years of home rule government, there are still different salaries for Danish people and Greenlandic people. So you could have two policemen working side by side, one a Dane and one a Greenlander, and the Dane will be making at least 25% more.
Mm.
And many, many people are really fed up with this. The problem is that the government doesn't really have the money to all of a sudden pay most of the people that work for the government are Greenlandic. A couple thousand are Dane. If they all of a sudden raise the Greenlander salaries to that of the Danes, they got no way to pay for it. And
what if they did it the other way around?
Lowered the Dane salaries? Well, that would make a lot of sense. However, you probably have a lot of the Danish people leave. Now, some people think that would be a good idea. Other people are worried that the system is still quite dependent on the Danish management. Some people think the Danish management are the problem, and other people think the Danish management is part of the answer. The interesting thing is there's several thousand Greenlanders, skilled, educated Greenlanders, working in Denmark, where they make Danish salaries because there's no discrimination in Denmark. So it's a crazy situation. If you're a Greenlander and you want to make the kind of money a Dane makes, you have to move to Denmark to do it. So it's going to be a big crisis, I think, because people are fed up and the government just can't afford to do anything about it.
What sort of solutions did the political parties present to the electorate?
For all these issues?
Yes.
Siumut, the party that was in government, basically ran on its record. And after 12 years in office, they finally decided to make equalizing the salaries a campaign promise, although they didn't explain how they're going to pay for it. To the left, Inuit Ataqatigiit, they were arguing for better, more responsible government for small communities. They have a system where bigger communities have a lot of responsibility and tiny communities, the size of maybe Whale Cove or Grease Fjord, have almost no authority. And Inuit Ataqatigiit was saying, we want small communities to have the same management rights as big communities. And Inuit Ataqatigiit was also talking a lot about the different wages, saying it's not fair. Basically, Inuit Ataqatigiit was saying whatever changes have to be made in the Greenlandic system in the next couple of years shouldn't hurt people at the bottom of the pile in government jobs or on welfare. They want to protect those people. On the right, one party said they should rejoin the European Common Market, and another party was basically saying it's time to privatize a lot of things. And in terms of small villages, this party was saying the government has to stop doing anything that loses money. So then the parties on the left said, well, that sounds very nice, but what you're talking about is killing the small communities. So that was a subject of considerable debate. But basically it was economic issues.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
For us to solve the dump problems.
How can we tell the southern recycling machines or people who produce these things, is it possible to identify some of the stuff that is recyclable, like put down recyclable on the paper or the bottle or the can?
It could be done.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, everything is recyclable and it could be done really. Right now it is being done by the beverage industry. You'll see it on all the pop cans.
Mm-hmm.
Either it's recyclable
Mm-hmm.
or it says 5 cents refund, which
Mm-hmm.
means that you bring it back and
Mm-hmm.
you recycle it. I haven't seen it anywhere else, but that's something that could possibly be done. And I think the only way that this is going to be done is our government, our federal government, will have to bring in legislation whereby
Mm-hmm.
the manufacturers or the food processors
Mm-hmm.
will put it on their container and say this is recyclable. I believe there is some plastic containers that if you look at the bottom, it will probably say recyclable. So, but it should be all over. I mean, every producer, every manufacturer should let people know that this is a recyclable product. Yes.
So it basically comes from government funding to do all this?
Well, I don't believe it needs much funding really, except to assist in the north, the communities. It's available
especially
to all the communities.
shipping back down.
That's right. That's the main problem here, and I think the government has come up with a fairly good program in regards to this.
Have they come up with any solution about shipping it back down?
Not yet. They're still looking at that aspect, and like I said, they may force the shipping companies, the boats, that bring the stuff up. They may say, well, you should charge maybe $5 a ton more, and whatever we want to ship back, if we identify this as recyclable stuff, you take it back and bring it back to recycling outfits down south.
The way I see it, I believe it should be in the legal system. It should be a law.
To bring it back.
Or recycle anything anywhere in Canada.
I'm not sure that it should be in. I don't like too many laws sometimes, It's sometimes it pushes people to do otherwise. They like to go around the law. Right?
Oh.
I think the answer really is everybody has to be concerned about it and everybody has to do something about it. And I think it'll work. I'm sure it'll work because there's a lot of concern right now, and I just hope it goes on like this, where people are concerned about it. I think we're on the right track. I think we're making great steps in the north to solve the problem, probably more than they're doing in the south. And I'm glad to see that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Cut. If I have any